All right, we are here. It is Sunday Night AstroLive, and I'm Robert Phoenix, bleeding with the green screen. Look at that. It's actually supposed to work. We're back in the old studio tonight because I thought it would be a good thing to do. Let me play around with this a little bit. This is supposed to actually, let's see, visual effects. Yes, I have a green screen. Look at that. Look at that. There we go. The powers of creation behind us. Look who's in front of us. Right there. Ah, yes, the gang is assembling. Thanks for being here. I decided to go at 7 tonight, but I promise I'm not going to go for too long. We're gonna get to the gravy tonight. We're gonna get to the gravy, and I'm going to spill the tea. I'm going to spill the tea, kids. Let me do this. Yep. Okay. Save that. And cancel. Let's export this. Okay. So we'll do SNAL PDF. We got some stuff to talk about tonight. I have heard your laments and ruminations, and I will endeavor to be as efficient as possible. There we go. Okay. All right. I think I got it pretty much all together here. So let me just check in with the chat, see how everybody's doing. We got 116 people here. So yeah, it's been a while. One of the reasons why I left this studio was because I was doing a live stream one night with David and Evan, and it was really fucking slow because the signal has to go through like some brick to get here. It's dense. There's some density. And I was just getting like utterly frustrated. And so I wound up going into the other space, which I'll still use, by the way. It's just that this was set up, and we had done a show with Emily, a conspiracy cocktail with Emily on Friday night. And that was really cool. Got to hang out with Masaki, and the gang was back together again. That was a cool thing. I think some of you might have been there. So anyway, this was already set up, and I just decided, why not just roll the dice and, do it in here tonight, right? So how is everyone? Are you enjoying the change in light and the change in time and the change in weather? There's a lot of change in the air, isn't there? But it's all happening in places that you can't see. That's the tricky part of it, isn't it? But every now and then, reality pricks your bubble of perception, and you can see the change happening. Let's see. Is that Friday night show available in recording? I don't think so. I think Emily just does them as one-offs. That's my sense. I'll see if she has a copy. She might. If she has a copy, I'll put it up on Locals. I'll do that. For you, Sun Tzu, I will do that because Sun Tzu has my back. And I appreciate that. So is Janice Phillips. You guys all have my back. I appreciate it. I got your back too. Enjoyed Misaki and his rundown in Japanese culture. Yeah. Shit, man. It's like he was on the front when he started going there about 2 years ago, it was just a trickle, and now it's more than a trickle. They're going hard on the whole globalist. We need more people thing. And what's weird is that Japan actually does need more people, but maybe they could find people that might be more amenable to their culture. You know what I'm saying? I'll give you an example, and it has to do with Japan. So one time, long time ago, I was really interested in this idea of antipodes. Like, are there geographical antipodes in the world? And there's actually, this is a long time ago, I'm sure it's still there. There's actually an app that, or website where you could type in a location to find where a geographical antipode for that location is. And I searched for a lot of antipodes, and I could only find one of real import and interest. And I know there were more, but this, based on my basic understanding of the program, I was, kind of learning how to fly a plane without a pilot's license. And I looked up the antipode for Japan. And sure enough, the antipode for Japan is Brazil. And they have a very interesting story, Brazil and Japan. So when Japan dissolved its feudal system, there are all these people in Japan that needed work, right? They needed because now all of a sudden they were no longer serfs of the shogun. So in Brazil, they were having a very hard time sort of carving out the Amazon and all of these, kind of sweltering places, because a lot of the Italians and some Portuguese, Europeans, some French, they went to Brazil thinking that they could go find their fortune there, get some land, farm, whatever. It was way too hot. I mean, you still have some Italians and clearly some Germans who I think came later. The Portuguese were, I think, obviously amenable to staying there because they were the ones running the place. But the Europeans, they laughed. They were like, "Fuck this! We're going back to Europe because it's too hot and sweltering here." So Brazil realized that Japan had all these free people now that were looking to work, and they were like, "Well, let's set something up with Japan, and we could take a lot of these feudal serfs off their hands, and they could come to Brazil." And it was perfect because the Japanese were used to a very humid and during the summertime, hot climate. So the climate of Brazil didn't pose a problem to them. And Sao Paulo has the largest Japanese population outside of Japan than any other place in the world. And so I always felt it was fascinating that these two countries that, again, according to this piece of software, were antipodal. Look who's here. Oh, yeah, you remember this place. You used to hang out here a lot. Yeah. Do you want to do your cameo shot for the people at home? There he is. Right there, the Astro Cat. So the moral of the story is it was the right group of people to populate Brazil. I mean, they were a perfect match for Brazil in terms of the climate, number one. And number two, their personalities were a perfect fit as well. They were hardworking, clearly happy to have a stake in the game, right? So it was a great opportunity for a country that had a need to be met and there were people to meet the need. That's a long way for me to say you can have people come into your country and help you, but it has to be the right fit, right? It has to be the right fit, or else the cultures that you bring into your country, especially one like Japan that has all kinds of codes and just ways of being that are you if you fuck up their codes, you fuck up the social order. I read this book on time one time, and this guy went to all these different cultures, and he explored the notion of time in all these different cultures. And Japan has all of these protocols built into their like greetings and saying goodbye and communication, and it's all very regimented because they're like multitasking and doing 5, 6 things at once. But if they take time and have these social rituals like the bowing and the bowing and the bowing and the exchange of gifts or whatever, it allows them to partition their experience. It's like a shared set of values that they all agree upon, so that when something is done, they can move on to the next thing, whatever the next thing is. It could be a business meeting, it could be a dinner, whatever it is, right? There are these social cues and social codes that they all understand, and nobody takes offense to it, right? It's all built in, and it may take more time to do these little things, but it allows them to enter and exit gracefully with whatever it is they're doing. Those are the social codes I'm talking about. And if people don't understand those social codes, it's a fuck story. So yeah, they may need new people because their population isn't repopulating, but it doesn't mean like you just open the doors and say, well, let's have it's a small world after all. Come on in here, and we'll have the global village. Now you want to be able to be, you know, smart about it. If you want people that are going to respect your culture, and you want to bring more people in and figure out who they are. Somehow I don't necessarily think that the Somalis are going to fit in. I know it's a radical thought and a radical idea, but I just don't. Now, if you were to ask, say, maybe the Filipinos or maybe the Nepalese, there's a bunch of young Nepalese that basically overthrew their government, and they're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with their lives. Maybe some Nepalese might be interesting. Although I've heard that they do have them in Japan and they can be problematic. This, according to Masaki. But anyway, I'm glad you liked the show. But Japan was always one of those places that we thought would retain its homogeneity. No place is safe. Like, no place is safe on this realm. Maybe China. And I think a lot of what Russia is doing is somehow to maintain its own homogeneity, even though there are parts of Russia when you get out into the stands, and they have a lot of Muslims in Russia. They've got Muslims in China too, out in Western China. Unfortunately, that's where the Uyghurs were rounded up and brought into these other camps in China. But yeah. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show tonight. And we got a lot of ground to cover. Probably be here for about 2 hours. And I've been thinking a lot about this Saturn Neptune stuff and how it's been affecting me personally. Let me just start with me, since it is my show, but I'm not going to talk in grandiose terms. So at least file that away. I've been really struggling in a lot of ways with Saturn and Neptune because they're opposing my sun. And my sun is at 29 degrees Virgo, and Saturn, Neptune is now at 29 Pisces, and it's already been there, and it's come back again. And Saturn was there before, and it's going to come back again as well. And where do I start with this? I mean, it's just been at the bottom of my chart, right? Like really like feeling like bottoming out in some ways. And I had a health scare in August. And some of that was very much related to, I think, what was going on with the South Node and Virgo and Mars and Virgo crossing over the South Node, getting very close to my sun and feeling really debilitated. But the more that I thought about it, it's like my heart was kind of in failure mode. And so my other organs were not being able to do what they're supposed to do, primarily my kidneys and my liver, but mostly my kidneys. And so I started to have all this water weight gain. And it's like watching yourself become a monster. I know some of you have had health issues. A lot of you had health issues. So I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Like when, all of a sudden your body becomes something that it's never been before. It's like who is this person in the mirror? What am I looking at? And for me, I had gained about 30 pounds of just fluid. I mean, it was really uncomfortable. And, I fucking looked pregnant. I mean, these were the first returns, the front lines of the Saturn Neptune opposition. And it just dawned on me like in the last 24 hours, like it was all about water, right? And all this water and all this fluid. And it was like down in the bottom of my house, right? Literally my house, my fourth house. And then it kicks in and, I turned 65 and then I've got to do like the Medicare thing, Saturn Sun opposition. Like the last time I went through this, when Saturn was opposing my sun, I was around 37 years old, right around there, about 37, 1997 to 2000. Saturn was right at that oppositional point. And so I was 37 years old. I didn't really feel old at that time, but I did feel like more of a sense of accountability. Like I needed to be accountable to my spirit. That was without Neptune. Neptune wasn't around then, right? And I think the other time I'd had that opposition was around 12, 13 years old. So just heading into adolescence. But this time, Neptune brought all the water. And and I have to say, like, it really affected me on a physical level because nothing has ever really happened to me physically, except when I was 18 months and I had spinal meningitis. And that was heavy. That was a heavy time, really heavy time. I was in the hospital for almost 3 months. It's crazy to think about that. And they treated me with penicillin and tetracycline. And I was close to death. I don't really remember that time. But they brought in I was basically baptized and given my last rites at the same time. And so the next morning, I mean, that's how grave it was. And then the next morning I was up in my little oxygen tent trying to pull the feeding tube out of my ankle. I still have the scar from the feeding tube in my ankle. But since then, I mean, I've been relatively healthy. And so this thing happens, and all of a sudden, I become acutely aware of my mortality. And not just my mortality, like, I could die, right? Like, I mean, that's always sort of in the back of everybody's mind, I think, on some level. Although that was there for sure. But other stuff, I wrote a piece on Substack where, I was talking about Scorpio and the Scorpio season. And I took somebody's carry-on luggage off the plane that looked like mine. And a flight attendant ran me down and had to say, "Excuse me, the man with the white hair." And it's like, oh, that must be me. I'm the man with the white hair now. Right. So this has been a really interesting time to try to come to terms with a lot of this stuff on an astrological level. I got a front row seat, right? But also just from a personal level as well, like I did a show last week and I was feeling kind of happy and flippant. And, I know that the astrology is the meat of the majority of these shows. And I do my best to get there, especially on the weekday. But I think it might have been Thursday where I was, just like feeling, fuck it. I want to have some fun and maybe have some laughs and just, you know, joke around a little bit. Because sometimes people need that, right? And there were some comments that came in that I took deeply personally, and I don't often do that. It's normally, I try. In fact, sometimes I don't even like to read the comments. I don't like to read the glowing ones. I don't like to read the terrible ones. I just, but I force myself to read the comments because I need to stay in touch and you know make sure that that I know that you're contributing. And a lot of times I'll read some of those comments and they're really good fucking comments. I'll just tell you that right now. But there were some comments that were not very flattering about my presentation. And I had to think about it. I really had to think about it. And part of me was like, do I want to be defensive about this? Because you're not really paying for this content. You can go anywhere you want, right? Or should I be remorseful and say, oh, gee, I'm sorry, I wasted your time. I'll do better next time. Or do I find some kind of middle ground that is meaningful? And I've been working with the middle ground part. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I just need to tighten up my act a little bit and make sure that, we're getting to the lead quicker. But sometimes, it's a morning thing and people like hang. And there were people that basically said, hey, look, this is kind of what we like sometimes. And I appreciate that. And I'm not saying that to justify um, you know, my defense of those comments or in defense of those comments. But it's not easy doing a show. It's not, because there's a lot that goes on and there's a lot that, we have to be accountable for. Uh Speaking of accountable, let's do this. We're going to do tonight's show in 2 1-hour increments. And the first hour is going to be brought to you by our friends at Silver Botanicals. And let's get that right up there. So we can do just a quick little announce in about an hour, and we'll do a shout out to True Hemp Science. Okay, there we go. I'll even make me a little bit small. There you go. Okay. So Silver Botanicals is our latest sponsor, and you can get the Astro Weather bundle from them at a $20 discount from $93.95 to $75.16. That includes shipping right there. And you get the Silver Tongue Oral Care, great mouthwash. Great mouthwash. You get the Silver Shield sanitizer. You got the Silver Shield bar of soap, the Botanical Sea Serum. You've got the deodorant. You've got the Silver Guard Silver Gel, Skin Guard Silver Gel, Silver Foot Shield. This is really good stuff and high quality nano silver with organic essential oils from all over the world. So if you're taking care of your body or your home, this is a great way to get started. The link is in the discussion or in the show notes. And you can just click on this for a 10% coupon, or go there and type in astro-weather when you check out, and you get 10% off anything. So you get 20% off for free shipping to try out these fantastic products from our friends, Silver Botanicals in San Marcos. We're going to have Dean on from Silver Botanicals in the next couple of weeks and talk about how cool this stuff is. All right. Well, why don't we get into the meat of the show here, since that's what I've been talking about. And I have been giving a lot of thought about the return of Neptune and Saturn. Let me see what we got here. Yeah, right there is what I want. No, that's not it. Hold on. Yeah, that's it right there. I've been giving a thought a lot about the return of Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, and why I feel like it is so important. So that's the graphic for tonight's show right there. Right there it is. Sun and AstroLive, Neptune and Saturn return. First of all, Neptune returns to 29. It's the final degree of the zodiac. It's not just any degree. It's not 28, it's not 27, it's 29. And it feels like the wrapping up of an age. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll probably maybe do this over the next couple weeks and just continue to explore this theme, because it does feel like we're coming to the end of something. Now, if we look at this in terms of the fourth turning, this would qualify as sort of the winter of the fourth turning. So if you're not familiar with the fourth turning, it's a book that talks about these various stages: first, second, third, fourth, and there's historical events that go along with these turnings. And the first turning in this country in most recent years is post-World War II. And it happens very quickly, this turning. It doesn't last very long. It lasts roughly from like 1947 to about 1967. It's about 20 years. But everything is very accelerated by that point in time. And that is the season of the hero. And it's very much associated with springtime. And it is springtime in America. You know, we've just come through this major war where theoretically we were the winners, but that's debatable, highly debatable. But we did get the spoils of the winners, meaning that our country, unlike other countries in Europe, was intact. Europe was bombed out. Europe had to rebuild. And the United States had already had a jump on Europe because there was all this industrialization happening for the war. So by the time the guys come back from the war, the factories are up and running, the shipbuilding, right? The automobiles, all the parts makers. I mean, America was ready to go. They literally had to step off the boats and step into a life. And that's a time of like really profound expansion, that 20-year period, 47 to 67. And it's marked by this idea that America is powered by heroes. You know, this is the time of John Wayne and Gary Cooper and Audie Murphy. You know, these are the heroes, right? Generally Henry Fonda, although Henry Fonda could play a bad guy. Heroes here, Hollywood had its dark sort of film noir stuff going on in the 50s, but they were still pushing tons of war films in the 1950s. They were retelling the war story over and over and over again. And John Wayne is kind of at his real peak in the 1950s. I think he does The Searchers in the 50s, right? Or the early 60s. Generally considered one of the best Westerns. But then that changes. And then we move into the 60s and the second turning, which is the season of the artist. So we go from the season of the hero, John Wayne, Audie Murphy, Gary Cooper. We go from that to the season of the artist and the season of the anti-hero. And we go from the spring of America to the summer of America, and it dovetails with the summer of love. So that's the second turning. And we go from John Wayne to Clint Eastwood. And John Wayne fucking hated Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood wanted John Wayne in one of his movies, and John Wayne was like, fuck you. They're both Gemini, by the way. And while Clint Eastwood was making a goofy-ass war movie called Kelly's Heroes, John Wayne makes the first pro-Vietnam War movie called The Green Berets. I mean, it is clearly a Robert McNamara-sponsored propaganda war flick. Like, John Wayne's going to go over there and kick some gook ass with the Green Berets. It's the only movie during that time that portrays America's plight in Vietnam as heroic. And it feels really out of tune, out of touch, out of time. And that was Wayne's statement about how he felt America had become unpatriotic. So we're in this, we go from the hero to the anti-hero. And, very taciturn counterculture figures like Steve McQueen and Marlon Brando and Clint Eastwood and Paul Newman. They all show up, right? Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, Easy Rider. It's the time of the anti-hero, Bruce Dern. And that's the second turning. And then that lasts for a while. And we get to the 80s, like the late 80s. And the late 80s becomes the third turning. And that is the fall of America. And you have Reaganomics, supply side economics, trickle down theory. And basically, they're beginning to loot the system, right? It's like fall and it's the harvest. We're gonna harvest as much as we can. Globalization kicks in. Gordon Gekko, Greed is Good, Michael Milken, Ivan Boesky, hedge funds. They all start and really take off during the Reagan era. That's the third turning. That is the fall, right? And that's called the season of the nomad, by the way. Right, so we have the season of the hero, we have the season of the artist, we have the season of the nomad. Like, who are we? Where are we going? We reach this pinnacle, which is the fall of Russia and the Soviet Union. I mean, wasn't that what everything was about? Beating the Russians, putting an end to communism. And it's like, okay, well, where do we go now? Shit, what do we do now? We spent all this time, trying to beat the commies. We beat the commies. What do we do now? Well, George Bush says, I got a great idea. Let's go start another fucking war. Wasn't a great idea, but the looting continued, and it continued during the Clinton era. And that's when China becomes most favored nation trading status. And it really fits into this idea that this is really the harvesting of America. And there's not a lot of fruit left on that tree. Right. And so we moved a while ago, and I think we could probably locate this around Obama, which would be the fourth turning. And it's the winter of America, right? It's like it's when we really, like, even when Bush was president, Bush 2, even when Bush 2 was president, who I thought was just incredibly unlikable, venal, and corrupt, uh, he was still very popular, right? There were people who still believed that to this day, now people think that he's a great fucking president. I shit you not. People think George W. Bush was a great president now because Trump is redefining his own presidency more in alignment with sort of the Bush neoconian political and economic theory of the time. He's kind of taken a page out of Bush Reagan, mainly Bush. So we're still kind of good. We're still kind of in that nomad phase. The plundering is still happening. But then Obama comes in, and Obama starts off, of course, as the most popular new kid at school, but quickly becomes very problematic. And even Democrats start to turn on Obama in his second term. There were Democrats who saw what he was doing and weren't in agreement with it, especially a lot of the military stuff. And this is where a lot of the reflexive race issues start to come into play. And if you criticized Obama, it didn't matter if you were on the right or the left. If you criticized what he was doing in Iraq or Afghanistan, you were considered racist. It was beyond politically incorrect to disagree with the Obama administration. It was flat out racist. And when that kind of chill comes across the land, where you can't have a reasonable discussion with people about who is theoretically leading us or looting us, whichever one you want to use, that's when things start to get really, really icy. And I remember there was this guy who played this Paul Revere character, and he was doing this thing, and he was kind of like calling Obama out, and Obama invited him to the White House, and you didn't really hear about that guy after that, right? It was kind of like, you better shut the fuck up because there's a new sheriff in town. And so I think this is when the chill really comes across the country. And this is when we move into the winter of America, the fourth turning. And this is the season of the hermit. And this is where people begin to look at their country and say, I don't recognize my country anymore. They feel as if they're vagabonds in their own country. And what's also interesting is that during that time, people were starting to pull away from societies, I mean, literally almost having to pull away from society because they lost their houses. They're living in motels or living out of their cars. And it feels a bit nomadic, but it's also very hermetic, and homelessness really explodes during that period. And it sets the stage pretty much for where we are now. So when you get into Pisces, right, seasonally, astrologically, you're in the final days of winter. So when we have Saturn and Neptune, which we just saw momentarily in Aries, we got a taste, and it was tastes a little bit like gunpowder. But to me, that 3-year period that begins in February of next year, we're going to talk about the interregnum tonight. But that 3-year period, in my estimation, is the beginning of the first turning, because it aligns itself with this outer planetary spring. By the way, I will not be talking about 1-3 Atlas tonight. There are other shows where you can find that, who are much more well versed on it than me. So this is where we're headed, right? But as you and I know, because we've been on this planet for a while now, it may be the first day of spring, but it might be 40 fucking degrees. And the first, I've followed enough baseball seasons to know that there were more than a few opening days where there was snow, especially when they played in Cincinnati or like Washington, D.C., when I think they started to play on opening day there. So we know it can be cold. Even though it's springtime, it can be cold. So if we look at March, late March, beginning of April, we can have a period of cold snaps before it actually feels like there's spring coming in. And so I use that analogy to say, just because we're going to have Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, it doesn't mean like all of a sudden the birds are singing and the bees are singing and, we're have a spring in our step again. These things take time. But what I am saying is that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is a harbinger of the new turning or the returning or the first turning. Now, I believe the start date for the first turning officially becomes 2030, when Saturn goes into Taurus. And we are clearly in a springtime mode. But we'll have periods where Saturn's in like that third decan, right? That from 20 to 30 degrees, it's in that Sagittarian decan, where things are going to get very interesting. And feels like that's a time where, so we're talking 2028, 2029. That's when we see justice come to town. It's inevitable. We will have to clean out the well before we can have this new spring or the first turning. Now, clearly there are competing models of reality. I don't have an idea as to what it looks like. I have an idea as to what it can feel like, but I don't have an idea as to what it looks like. Now, for some people, like Larry Ellison, it might just be the rebirth of Babylon. And, he and his breakaway society are the rulers of the world. And they are here to plunder as much money and resources as they can so they can be immortal in the flesh and rule over us for all of eternity, however many of us are left at that time. And that may be their version of their first turning. Like, they're the gods return, and they're the return of the gods. And then they rule over the plebes. Now, that's not my version of it, but that could be, that could be their version of it. But we are going to be moving into a different time. And that different time starts in February of next year. Now, the reason why we're talking about Saturn Neptune tonight in the retrograde is because once we move into this period in February, I don't like to talk about upgrades and stuff like that. It feels really commonplace. But there is a sense here that when Neptune and Saturn come together, you are absolutely 100% accountable for everything you think about and feel and bring into your life. Now, theoretically, you should be that way anyway, but you're not going to get off the hook with Neptune and Saturn and Aries, right? Like thoughts become things very, very quickly, very quickly. And what we collectively, or if you're watching this stream tonight, what we want to be able to do is be ready for that. And these retrogrades are there to help us clean out this last bit of muck that keeps us from being these vibrant, purpose-filled, and I would say divinely directed beings. Because that's how Saturn and Neptune will work together in Aries. Because Aries is the self, it's the individual, it's who you are, right? It is will unmanifest, pure will. That's the nature of Aries. Neptune comes in and to some degree spiritualizes that, right? It gets us thinking about the transcendental nature of self, but not just the transcendental nature of self, right? The transcendental nature of self would say, well, we go beyond who we are. We're no longer who we are. We're something beyond who we are. And I think Neptune and Aries does point to that. But with Saturn there, it is much more corporeal. It's not something that's etheric. It's not something that's just this kind of wild spirit blowing through the ethers of the wind. Saturn brings consequences. Saturn brings judgment. And if you are not aligned with who you are by that time, then the chances for you to accelerate are going to become more burdensome. There's going to be two groups of people, basically. There are going to be people that are going to be burdened by the past. They're going to be burdened by suffering. They're going to be burdened by any number of things that would bring them, for lack of a better term, more density. They'll be burdened by them. And it will be difficult at times because you'll see other people who will be absolutely kicking ass and taking names because they have cleaned out the reservoir. They've emptied out the muck. And we're in the emptying out of the muck time. And we don't have a lot of time. Now, Saturn and Neptune will go direct. They'll still be in Pisces. And it'll still be helpful. But the retrograde, and I have dates for you, by the way. The retrograde is really important. So let's bring this up here. So this is a phase of crisis and cleansing. And it starts now because both planets are retrograde. And Saturn goes direct at 25 degrees 9 minutes. Neptune goes direct at 29 degrees 22 minutes, which is 11:22 for all of you numerology freaks. And Neptune goes direct on the 10th of December. And just a couple weeks before that, Saturn goes direct. So I looked up Saturn 25 on the Sabian symbols, and I came across a very interesting symbol. A religious organization succeeds in overcoming the corrupting influence or perverted practices and materialized ideals. Keynote: the power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and to induce necessary catharsis. Where is Saturn right now? It's at 25 degrees. That's where she is. 25 degrees. Right there. It's going to be at 25 until the 28th of November. Let me read that line again. The power of the soul to intervene in the personal life to induce necessary catharses. If your life stops working or you're going through something deep and profound, you're headed in the right direction. You're headed in the right direction. It's when in deep water, become a diver. Let's continue to read this. The necessary centralization of the conscious attention and will, symbolized by the preceding picture, most often bring negative results: exclusivism, pride, jealousy, greed for power and wealth. Every man is a church that has the soul as its God, but most men forget the soul and live according to dogmatic rules and habits, which not only have become empty of inner meaning, but very often have been perverted by the demands of the senses and the emotional nature, and by the ego with its rationalizing intellect. A purging or catharsis is needed to restore not only fresh and creative spontaneity, but even more the contact with the soul and the God ordained Dharma. This is the last stage of the 71st subcycle. It leads significantly to the series of 5 symbols, which concludes the vast cycle, because the final consummation of the process of actualization of the potency inherent in the original creative act requires moments of crisis and purification. Okay, this is what I'm talking about, right? It is this degree, 25 Pisces with Saturn, that is bringing us the personal crises that we need to have in order to have catharsis. And I got to tell you, getting fucking sick like that was a major crisis in my life. And I'm still processing it. I'm still going through not just it, right? But I'm also going through almost like a kind of a past life review, who I've been, over the past 3 months, 6 months, year. I just saw a spirit in here, by the way. I just saw a spirit in this room. Anyway, it's been a very interesting time for soul searching for me, for yours truly, right? And even having those, and I left those comments up because I wanted to leave them up as a reminder that I could do better. That we can't rest on our laurels just because we may be good at something. Doesn't mean we take it for granted, right? We always have to remind ourselves that we can get better or stay true to form and still find a way to bring some levity to the situation. So I began to think about this on a collective level as well. And I'm telling you right now, the three major religions, the three Abrahamics, the AAA, they're going to be going through it. They are going to be going through it. Now, I can only speak in some ways to the Christian world because when I had spinal meningitis, I was baptized as an Episcopalian. I am not a church person. I've never been a church person. For those of you who are, God bless you. I don't judge you. But that said, some strange subversion of Christianity has taken over. In a miscegenation of Christianity and Judaism called Christian Zionism has become, in my estimation, a very dangerous belief system. And a lot of that comes together in a nexus point known as the Trump administration, where his evangelical advisor is Paula White, who, for all intents and purposes, by other Christians, have claimed that she is a no-good sinner of a woman and not a true representation of God. She's no Billy Graham, although Billy Graham was a Freemason also. But it's this kind of new revivalism and new charismatic Christianity that has erupted around Trump and primarily through Charlie Kirk. And the whole Charlie Kirk event went from being a memorial to almost like a quasi-spiritual political revival. And I have a couple pictures from it that'll show you what I'm talking about. These are people at the Charlie Kirk Memorial. I mean, they are there to praise and worship God. And their fallen one, Charlie Kirk, I mean, they have metastasized this thing into a revival, right? Into a revival. And it's got this weird synthesis with freedom and America and making it great again and give me that old time religion, but give me a little, Erica Kirk and an MK Ultra double on the side, right? I mean, it's weird. It's phenomenon. And when I think about it, and I think about Charlie's right-hand man, what's his name? Pastor Bob, or the guy that is really sketchy at TP. He's a pastor. He's a pastor. He's a son of a pastor. You guys know who I'm talking about. This guy is sketchy as fuck. Right? Like right after Charlie Kirk gets shot, whatever you believe about Charlie Kirk, whether he's dead, whether he's been taken out, the character in it, whatever you believe, these people believe this guy is dead and he's gone to heaven. And they're praising God and praising Charlie Kirk and praising Jesus and praising heaven. This is an enervating collective moment for this group of people. And if they were to go down the rabbit hole, what they would find was that as soon as Charlie Kirk was shot, they have video of him getting on his cell phone and walking away from the stage. Who's the first person he calls? Supposedly was his father. But really, the phone records show the first person he called was Erica Kirk, who was not even at the event. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a religion around Charlie Kirk and around TPUSA. But the problem is that the religion has gotten off to a real rocky start. Now, they did everything in their power to get this thing as close to 9/11 as possible, which again, in my astrological travels, has led me to not only believe, but with the astrological facts on hand, say that 9/11 was the day that Jesus was born and not 12/24/25, right? That's not the day. So they get it as close to 9/11 as possible, which is a blasphemy, really, when you think about it. And they go about creating this new religion. But it's not really a new religion. But it is like a religion or a version of Christianity that's kind of layered on top of whatever they're bringing to the table, right? Whether it's Southern Baptist or Methodist, right? It's this new layer. And Charlie Kirk has become an apostle. He's become a saint. But when you go down the rabbit hole, all of a sudden, where are we? Well, we're back here with a religious organization succeeds overcoming the corrupting influence of perverted practices and material life, the power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and induce necessary catharsis. Get ready, because this is not going to go well. Because the foundation of their new church with St. Charles as their apostle is a faulty foundation. It's an extremely faulty foundation. So that's just one sort of layer of this. But I wanted to show you these images. Like, this is very much, Neptune and Aries is also, David and I talked about this, like the birth of new religions. Because the old ones will have to end. Like for the quote unquote social engineers to bring in their version of the first turning, or their version of the new age, or the new dawn, or the dawn of a new day, they'll have to have one faith to bind them all. So that means the other faiths have to go away, including this version of Christianity. And how do you wind up dismantling this? What is the 9/11 of this new Christianity? Is all of a sudden the whole Charlie Kirk thing going sideways. And more information comes out, and more information comes out, more information. And then you have all these people who feel like they've been had. And their religious experience around it is not very pleasant, right? Like, they begin to really question their faith. And the people who've been selling them this, and it's really weird, right? Because the church and the state seem to have become fused at the hip in a lot of ways. Like, even though Trump isn't a religious person, there's enough religious aura and enough Christian aura around Trump that it feels like it has. Do you know what I mean? You have all these people praying for Trump, and they should pray for his ass. He needs it. Let's talk about Judaism. I was talking with some clients last week, and they were living on Crete. and they were going to move to Crete and start doing some work there. And one of them was going to try to heal there. The other was going to. He's an engineer. He's going to try to do some engineering work. And all of a sudden, there's this influx of Israelis leaving Jerusalem, leaving Israel because of what's happening in Israel. Right? That's a really interesting. Like, there's always been this idea of Jews being kicked out of countries, rootless cosmopolitans, but nobody was kicking them out of Israel. They're like removing themselves out of Israel. They don't want to be there because they're like, fuck this. We don't want to be a part of this war. We don't want to have to be in the crosshairs of whatever happens next. So you would think that the Jewish people, would retain their faith, and it'd be like Masada or something, blowing the shofar, and nobody's going to pull us out of here. Hell no. They're on the next flight to Crete, and then they're populating other places like Florida, Thailand. There's a massive migration of Israelis leaving the country. Now, if you were really bound to the faith of your country, you would stay. You would say, this is our land. This is our holy land. This is the land that, our Lord gave us, right? We're the chosen people. That's not entirely true. So now there's cracks in Judaism. And it's not just people who are abandoning the ship in Israel. We'll get to another point here. But there's more than you know. And you would think that if their faith was bound with the place, they would stay in the place. Remember, this is all Piscean, right? And it is the cradle of the three Abrahamic religions. So here's another couple of images from, this is where the Arizona Cardinals play football. This is their stadium. And here's a guy bringing his cross on this. People used to do this. This is what Rasputin did back in the day. Rasputin was this wild man who lived in a remote Russian village, and he took up a cross and he started to basically walk through Russia to bear this cross, and eventually leads him to St. Petersburg in the Winter Palace, right? So there's a lot going on there with that cross. There's a lot of people have taken it. That's at the Charlie Kirk event. And then here you go at the bottom, right? You had Erica Kirk, who has, I think, become less well-liked in such a short period of time than almost any other woman I can think of. It's amazing. There's the picture of her and J.D. Vance looking highly inappropriate, I might add. Highly inappropriate. So I just brought these up because there are cracks and fissures here. And it feels contaminated. And it's not just this version of Christianity. I mean, you've got the Pope and the Catholic Church, who have their own sort of desecrated version of their own faith. I think by and large, most people, especially in Europe, have come to the realization that Islam is not a religion of peace for the most part, right? At least not the groups that have migrated to Europe. I've met some Muslim people. They were cool. No problem with them. Smart, thoughtful, deep. But, there's a lot of different flavors of Christianity. There's different flavors of being a Muslim. Sufis are some of the most loving people in the world. The Salafists hate them. They'll kill them all. Right? So there are cracks in the Abrahamic Tower. And that's what we're going to be seeing here over the next few months, the next few weeks. You're going to see these crises erupt. And people's faith in some of these institutions is going to be shaken. And their faith and their belief is going to be put on full blast. And that is a collective crisis, but it also manifests as a personal crisis. We look around and we have this whole thing going on with the government shutdown and the SNAP stuff. And the early results aren't in yet. They're not in yet. Give it a week. Let's see where this thing goes. Right. And that's all part of this system. It's not just the church, because in a lot of ways, the government itself has become the church. The government itself has become everything. Right. Especially under the Trump administration, where there's, all these hardcore dispensationalists, and then you have the hardcore Habadniks, right? It's just like there is no separation of church and state. The state is the church. That's what it's boiled down to, right? And if they get their wishes any further with things like Palantir and the digital ID, the digital surveillance, you get the all-seeing eye, which is the eye of God. It is totally, and that's the state. It's omniscient and it's everywhere. It watches you in your home, what you're using, how much you use. It watches you in your car. Do you know how many cars now are headed towards becoming self-driving cars, or at least having the option to become self-driving? From here on out, all of them. So you won't even get to be able to drive your car wherever you wanted to. That's because some higher power has decided that you really can't move about. All right, let's talk about some of the John the Baptists here that are bringing down the corruption, so to speak. All right, we got Candace Owens. Looks like a little China doll, doesn't she? Candace Owens is cute as a button, but man, she's fierce, and she's a Catholic, right? She's taken on the Catholic sword of truth. She's kind of like Joan of Arc in some ways. I got to hand it to Candace Owens. She's got some balls. But she became a Catholic. She got her spiritual agency. And now she's going after Israel. She's going after unchecked Jewish power. And she's got $250 million behind her because her husband's worth that much, a full team of security, and the armor of God, because she has become a Catholic. And back before Vatican I, before they changed the agreement that it wasn't it was the Romans who killed Jesus and not the Jews. Before Vatican I, that formula was reversed. But Candace Owens is taking up the pre-Vatican I sword. And it all started when she said Jesus is king. And that happened to her when she was at the Daily Wire, and that got her into some big trouble. And little did they know how much trouble she was going to stir. Maybe they shouldn't have made such a big deal out of it. Looking back on it, Tucker Carlson. Tucker has become a Christian. I don't know what kind of Christian he's become, but he talks a lot about his faith now, faith in God. I would assume Tucker's probably, he might be a Catholic. Hard to say. His father was adopted. What Presbyterian. I get Tucker Presbyterian. Maybe somebody out there can figure it out, put it in chat. But he's leading with his faith, right? And he's calling out people like Ted Cruz who don't know shit about the Bible. Because when he opens his mouth, lies come out. And Tucker nailed Ted Cruz to the cross. And Tucker, again, is falling back on, not I wouldn't say falling back. Tucker is using his newfound faith and humility, but he's using it in his own way in the service of truth. And then right below them, you have Nick Fuentes, who is a Catholic, right? So the reason I'm bringing them up is because all three of them are involved in their own way in disassembling. Tucker says he hates the Christian Zionists. Well, I don't think he really hates them because his God forbids him to hate. However, oh, look at that. We got this on now. That should be better, right? Is that right? How's that? Oh, that should be, you know what? I was using the wrong mic the whole time. I'm going to sound much more important now. It's been a while since I used this mic. But and Nick is a Catholic, right? Goes to church. Wonder what his confessions are like. So they all are involved in what this, right? A religious organization succeeds in overcoming the corrupting ideals, corrupting influence, or perverted practices of materialized ideals. We're not talking about a institution in and of itself, but it's the people that are somehow spiritually propelled by these institutions. By the way, Nick Fuentes might be the most profane Catholic I've ever run across, although the Catholics can be pretty profane. But I feel like they're important in this discussion, especially over the next 4 to 5 weeks. Because Candace Owens is going pedal to the metal on Charlie Kirk. And if she goes far enough, what she'll do is she'll untangle the corruption at TPUSA, which had become and was becoming kind of a modern revivalist circuit with Charlie Kirk as the prophet of CPUSA. That's what's been happening, at least on the CPUSA side, or TPUSA, not CPUSA. Candace is going after Moby Dick. Candace is Ahab. And if she is successful and she's got a massive following. Are you kidding me? She's got 2.5 million people that are watching her shows. 2.5 million people. Do you know how much YouTube has to pay her? A lot of money. I don't think she's demonetized. Maybe she is. I don't know. Not sure she needs the money, but she, in terms of reach, 2.5 million people. Tucker, he'll get 1.5 million people easily on some of his interviews. Fuentes is growing in leaps and bounds, and he'll get 2.5, 3 million people watching his Rumble stuff, his clips. Do the math on this. These are not just inert numbers. These are numbers that are changing people's perceptions about how people feel, particularly about 2 out of the 3 Abrahamic faiths. And this is all part of this retrograde period. You're going to see some stuff here over the course of the next couple of weeks that will be shocking. Now, for you guys, maybe not so shocking, but maybe even shocking for us. We're going to see some shocking things. There are going to be people that are going to be stepping down. It's already happening, right? Like, and it's not just going to be with the church or TPUSA, although some of this heat is going to hit those places for sure. There are scandals galore. Scandals galore. I don't know if you caught Tucker Carlson's interview with Sam Altman. Whoa. Sam Altman had a programmer who was happy and living life and feeling good about his gig. And all of a sudden he figured out that they were using copywritten material. They were stealing intellectual property for OpenAI. And this guy was going to be a whistleblower. And he wound up shooting himself in the head twice. Who does that? That's a pretty damn good shot. The guy didn't even own a fucking gun. He was some Indian kid. He was happy with his life. But Tucker Carlson put Sam Altman on full blast. It was, if I was Sam Altman, I would have said, I'm not saying another thing until I get a lawyer. Right? So the things that are going to be coming up here are going to be jaw-dropping. Because this is where the energy is. Now that's out there, right? That's out in the world. In your own life, I think we'll all have various crises in our own life because I remember as a kid going through like Nevada. You can still go through Nevada. Last chance for gas. 75 miles or something like that. Although those are more rare now than they've been in quite some time. But it's kind of where we are right now. So if you're going through some deep shit, it's okay. You're supposed to. You're supposed to be going through deep water right now. You're supposed to be going inside and looking at who you are and where you've been. And you may come out of it and you may say, you know what, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay. In fact, I think if I invest a little bit more in my spiritual practice and become just more assiduously aware of my negative habituation, address a few things, get some momentum, I might be able to do something here. Or at least cultivate a different kind of attitude. Because what we want to be able to do is we want to get rid of feeling like we're victims. I've been into that. I mean, that's like, oh, you're 65 and you're just going to keep getting older from here, and more things are going to happen, and just get used to it, buddy. And I'm like, I've never been that way. When COVID came along, I was like, fuck that. I know exactly what's going on here, and I'm not going to put on a fucking mask for anybody. And I'm certainly not going to get a shot or allow them to stick their nanotechnology, up into my forebrain. So why should it stop here? And these are things I have to look at. So tomorrow, it's just part of a process. It's part of a process. But the bottom line is that we cannot be victims, whether it's our physical capacity, age, whatever it is, right? The time for victimhood is not going to play with Saturn and Neptune and Aries. No fucking way. It's not going to play. And I hope to God that many of us are as up to speed as possible, because things can get fast and furious with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. And the accountability factor will be on display. Big accountability factor. So this is interesting. I was kind of rooting around, and I was looking at Neptune and Pisces / Pisces and poisons and faith. And there's a whole series of archdemons for every astrological sign. Were you aware of that? So I found this to be very interesting, given that we're dealing with Saturn, which is Capricorn, and Neptune, which is Pisces. So the archdemon for Pisces, this is some cult traditions related to the zodiac, are archdemons. The name associated with Pisces is Vasabiel, which means the secrecy of God. In contrast, the archdemon associated with Capricorn is Samakiel, the poison of God, suggesting the concept of poison is linked to a different sign in that specific lore. Isn't that interesting? Because we normally think of poisons associated with Pisces, but in this sort of anti-universe, where these demiurge archangels represent signs, that it is Capricorn that is the poison of God. So either way, we're dealing with poisons and faith. So this is the sigil for Vasabiel right here. And that is the sigil for Samakiel. So these are the actual things that you would draw if you wanted to invoke these daemons. You'd do some other things. You'd say some things, and you'd have a circle, whatever, right? And you would. This is the summoning. So it's interesting that with these two planet signs, Capricorn, Pisces, Neptune, Saturn, either way we get there, right? Either way, either through the traditional kind of rendering of Pisces associated with poisons and toxins. But this is secrecy of God. I can see that with Pisces. And so when you put the two of them together, what do you get? You get the secrets, the poisons, the toxins emerging to the surface and coming out. That's where we're headed. This is where we're headed. And we're going to see things over the next few weeks that will be jaw-dropping. And it's not going to be easy for certain people to wrap their head around what they're seeing and witnessing and experiencing. Although, again, I'm going to say that for those of you who are watching this, you're going to have a much better leg up, because the refrain will be, "Well, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so." Something is coming. Something is coming, and I think some of the White House staff are starting to bunker out. Like, that's what I've heard. That Tulsi Gabbard, Stephen Miller, the Bubble Boy, they're bunkering out. Why is that? Why are they doing that? What do they know? What do they know about civil unrest and what might be approaching us as the SNAP stuff does not get turned back on? Anyway, I thought you guys would find this interesting. That no matter how we get there, we get there, and it's the it is the rising of poisons and toxins to the top. And of course, we go back to 2020 and COVID and mRNA and all the shots that went along with that. And it continued. It didn't stop, right? Saturn was in Pisces. It kept going. It was still happening, although it was starting to wind down. Okay. So I found this to be interesting. There's going to be a new Exorcist movie, and it's going to be released on 3/14. And it's The Exorcist Deceiver. Guess who's in it? Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn. Two of the actors from the original Exorcist are back. This would be The Exorcist 3. And guess what happens on that day? 3/14. The sun's at 23 Pisces, but the moon is in Capricorn. So we have Pisces and Capricorn again in this third rendition of The Exorcist. The second one was with Richard Burton. Wasn't very good. But this one is being directed by, I don't know the director's name, but apparently he's very well known in horror circles. And there was a series called The Tower. Is it The Tower or The Dark Tower or something like that? Either on Netflix or Amazon. It was, the guy who directed that is directing this. So we're going to get a new version of The Exorcist. And by this time, of course, both Saturn and Neptune will be in Aries, but the sun will be in Pisces and the moon is. I just thought it was an interesting sync with the two previous sigils of Capricorn and Pisces, the poison of God and the secrecy of God. And that brings us to cleansing your own poisons and toxins. So what I did is I decided to go house by house again and give you guys a little tour of the zodiac and how you might want to deal with this. Okay, before I do that, let me go into our banner section here and let's do a little love for TrueHempScience.com, which is going to be the second sponsor of tonight's show. Coming into the home lap here. So this is Chris's page. And if you haven't availed yourself of his CBD, I highly recommend it. And there are people in chat. That's a really great deal. You get the Starlight gummies. That's your order right there. These things kick total ass. And look at that. First time customer, you receive 20% off. Look at that. How about that? And if you get 150 or more, give Chris shoot him an email. Say, hey, I'm with Robert Phoenix. 15 mins. Oh, cool. I'll throw you some extra stuff. So go on in here, and all you got to do is spend $100 or more, and type when you check out. Type in one. Even if you sign up for there'll be a code. Type in 15MINS. You'll get the goodie bag on top. Some of the best CBD. You got problems sleeping at night, tap into the dose. $150 more to get you free shipping. And there's always, always, always a 30-day money-back guarantee. Pet Sounds, great for your pets. There you go. All right, let's look at some of the things I put together here. And we're trying to understand where we can purify these poisons and these toxins from our chart. Okay. And from our lives. So let's say you're a Pisces rising, reasonably Pisces rising. There's Saturn, there's Neptune, although you'd have to be bang on. Neptune may not be there yet, but Saturn will be. Eventually, Neptune will be there. So if you do whole signs, it's right up your alley. So you want to literally cleanse yourself, right? Like you want to get it, you want to detox. Literally, you want to detox with these two planets in your first house. So you want to get rid of your metals. You want to get rid of microplastics. Like that's really ground zero, right? You're cleansing. You're cleansing. You're going through a physical purge. You've already gone through the spiritual purge with Saturn, Neptune in the 12th. Now you're going through the physical purge. And there is a profundity here that is, if you're a Pisces rising, you got Saturn, Neptune in your first house. That's powerful. That's really, really powerful, powerful stuff, right? Maybe you meet your teacher with Saturn, Neptune in the first, and maybe you become a teacher. Maybe this is, by the time this is all said and done, and Saturn moves into your second house, you're like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to start assisting, helping, guiding, teaching people, because there's a profundity here. And Neptune will camp out in your first house for 15 years. And you're living by trust and faith all the way. So congratulations. If you are Pisces rising, and if you're whole signing it, you wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah. Good job. I mean, you've come through 3 years of Saturn in your 12th, feeling like nobody understands you, feeling spiritually adrift in many, many cases, feeling like you may have some distractions, but your existential crisis is about to come to an end. You're about to find out who you are on a very deep level. And to get there, the cleansing part is important. You want to be a clear channel. That means you probably have to give up some things too. Things that you eat, things that you drink, things you put in your body, things that are generally pretty fun. Yeah, you may have to put those on the shelf for a while. That's the way Saturn works. But I like Saturn in the first house. I think it's very underrated. It's supposed to be exalted in the seventh, which it is. But in the first, it gives gravitas. I think it's a great placement. All right. So we're going to put Saturn and Neptune in the second house. Where is that second house? Right there. So that makes you an Aries rising, right? So clean up your money situation. Means if you have debt, take care of it to the best of your ability. Sweat. Saturn in the second house is powerful. It realigns your values, your material values. And a lot of people think Neptune in the second house is not a great place for money. I disagree with that. If you have the right attitude, right, which is gratitude, Neptune in the second house will be a profound teacher for you. A profound teacher. Because there will be times Neptune in the second house where you will have considerable resources. And then you'll have to use them. And you're like, well, I just had all that money. Yeah, but you had the money to use. And then you'll think, well, you know what? I'm really grateful for the money I had. And I'm still grateful. I'm happy. I have a roof over my head. And, we're healthy and the cars work. And, man, I'm blessed. And then guess what? All of a sudden, the tide's back in again. Oh, look. Hey, we got a little boost here. Isn't this great? Yeah, but the whole idea is to remain the same, right? And the same is you want to be high. You want to be high on the food tree, right? You want to be high. You want to be high. You want to be high in the branches to get the highest fruit. You want to keep your attitude and your belief space grateful. And if you have to work. If you have to work to zero out your debt, whatever it takes. That's Saturn in the second house, whatever it takes. But if you do it and you take it on with a sense of gratitude, somebody's going to notice. Somebody's going to notice, and somebody is going to give you a break. Right? Like somebody's going to say, you know what? Let's say it's a parent. And one of the issues has always been being responsible. And all of a sudden you have a parent that sees you as being responsible. And guess what? You get a break. It's like, I was going to save this for you until I passed away. I'm going to give it to you now. I know that happened to somebody recently, by the way. But that's not uncommon. Do the works, stiff upper lip, smile, take care of your money, your resources. And remember, Saturn and Neptune are going to be going into Aries. So we're just talking about sort of how you, like, if they're showing up here, you just got to know your chart. If they're showing up here in any way, this is what you have to do. This is transits, right? Okay. Let's do the third house. What are we going to do for the third house? All right, here we go. All right. So what you want to do here, any degree of Saturn, Neptune. So if this is Pisces, I'm sorry, this would be Aquarius rising. If you would be Aquarius rising, if you have Pisces in the second. My bad. And don't trip on Aries here. This isn't supposed to be here. This would be Capricorn. So if you're Capricorn rising, you're going to have Saturn and Pisces in your third house. Okay. So clear your mind and mind the small talk. Don't talk a lot of small talk shit, right? Do not, if you have Saturn and Neptune right now retrograding, what you want to do in your third house, you're going to be Capricorn rising. You want to look at how you waste your energy with small talk, and don't do it. Don't do it, because it's the bigger ideas, it's the ninth house ideas that you want to bring into that third house, right? And you want to clear your mind. So you may want to lay off of a lot of distractions, less screen time, still the mind. Allow other imagery, allow other forms of information to come to your conscious awareness. Okay, let's do fourth house. Again, don't put Aries over here. I started to use these charts. So the fourth house, you're going to have, basically, you're going to be a Sagittarius rising, right? So I used this one before, home exorcism. And you may want to invest in some feng shui here, right? You may want to look at that, around your home. If you're a Sag rising, you're going to have Saturn, Neptune down here retrograding. It would also be a good time for you to clear some stuff out. Trust me, I got plenty of stuff I can clear out here. Maybe we'll do that. I've got all my mother's clothing. I got tons of her clothes. And just been trying to figure out what I think I'll just donate them. But it's hard going through all the stuff, right? But that's like the fourth house. That's what I have to go through. I got to go through her things and help her move on in the spirit world. Maybe it's all of her things that are keeping her here. I feel like she's still here in some ways. Not in the best way either. So maybe you've got a situation like that in your own home. Clearly, with Saturn and Neptune there, I think you also have to look at your home in general, and if it is an appropriate place for you to stay. Because if you've got Saturn also moving into Aries, intercepted in your fourth house, you may want to pack up and move. But you can't do that just yet, right? Because it's familial. It's the stuff that's connected to how you were raised. And we're all going through that retrograde phase right now and looking at these remnants of our past, whatever house it shows up in, right? So that's your fifth house. I think the houses get better from here on out, just in terms of their representation. I started using different. Hold on, where's the fifth? Fifth house. I know I have the fifth house here. Seventh, where is she? Right, here we go. Oh, it's one of the other ones. Okay. So, all right. If you have Saturn in your fifth house, you are well, no, I'm sorry. I got thrown off. This would be if you're Scorpio rising. This would be if you're Scorpio. I always get this confused in my chart. If you're Scorpio rising, this is what you're going through with the fourth house. My bad. Okay. That's where we want to be. Now, if you're Sag rising, now you've got Saturn, Neptune going through the fifth house. So this is wrestling with the angel of creation. So if you're Sag rising, this is what you got going through your fifth house. So the angel of creation is your children. And you may be having some interesting or challenging times with children here, right? Again, this is going to be probably, well, no, it's just so hard because everything's at the end, right? It's not like it's at the beginning. So we can't just say, well, this is going to be, normally this would be, Sag with Aries here, right? Like that's how this would work. But because these are late degree Saturn Neptune, they put it like right around here. But again, if you're just using whole signs, just go with me. Okay. So if you have Saturn Neptune retrograding in your fifth house, you're wrestling with children, number one, but they're just a manifestation of creation. Right? What you are trying to get in alignment with is how are you going to spend the next 3 years? Because Saturn in the fifth house isn't really fun. Right? It is a no fun fucking house for Saturn. All work, no play. However, if it's creative, that's different. That is different. So if you're working assiduously at something creative, that's with Neptune there, right? As well. And you're wrestling with it, something good can come out of it. But it's not always going to be pleasant or fun. But what you're trying to do ultimately is to blow out the pipes. And then once these planets move forward, then you can really tap into the energy. And I think the phrase here with Saturn and Neptune is God helps those who help themselves. That's what this is all about. You put forth the effort and your relationship with your soul will reflect that. This is how this works. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to this point where we're sort of blowing the shit out so that we can get to this point in February and then moving forward where we're dealing with the intensity of the energies of creation with Neptune and Saturn so that we are accountable, we're responsible, and we have our tools, we have our fire, we have our steel, right? And we can forge away. But it's the in-between time, it's the now time that we're really dealing with. So this is, again, these are late degrees. We're dealing with late degrees, Neptune, Saturn. I suppose if you're using whole signs, you can throw that in there. Let's go to the sixth house. Oh, did I get the sixth house? Oh, I didn't get the sixth house. Oh, yeah, I did. Here we go. I don't know why I started using these other ones. No? Let me see here. Yeah, I have a sixth house. All right, it's the one that I didn't. Okay. Let me just throw this up here really quickly. Hold on. All right. All right, there we go. Yeah, that'll work. All right. On the fly. Right there. Health, and Dharma. So you can't really dig into your work unless you are healthy. So this Neptune Pisces retrograde, right, would be over here in your 6th house. So if this is Pisces, right, then the next sign over would be Aries. So this would be Libra rising over here, right? So this would be Libra rising right there, boom. And you would have health, and Dharma. So the 6th house is very dharmic. It's like, why are you here? What are you here to do? How are you here to serve others? Well, you can't serve anybody unless you help yourself and health yourself, right? So this is, again, this short period that we're in with these retrogrades. Get it right. Figure it out. And it may just be one or two things. Maybe you have to cut out a job that you fucking hate. Let's say you're working 2 jobs and there's one and you say, I gotta work these 2 jobs. But if you're working 2 jobs and it's making you sick or sick to your or heart sick, maybe you should think about giving one of them up and having some faith that you'll get what you need if you do that. Because the last thing anybody wants to be is sick. You don't want it. It sucks. So this is and you may be just fine. But if you have Saturn Neptune retrograding in house 6, then you just got to clean a few things up. Whatever they are. Because I'm telling you right now, if you've got that happening in your chart, you got Saturn Neptune going into your 7th house. As soon as it moves into Aries, and guess what? Especially Saturn, it's time for partnership. So you want to be the healthiest person you can be so you can attract a healthy person. And I'm not just talking physically healthy, I'm talking physically, mentally, spiritually, morally, right? Where are the last pieces? Where's the last remnants of the shadow hanging out so you can clean up your act and let go of the thing that you think defines who you are. All right, 7th house. So we know 7th house is going to make you theoretically like a Virgo rising, somewhere in that mix. Again, if you're whole signing it. Now I'm back to these. Soulmate or cellmate. Saturn Neptune is going to be somewhere in here. And this is your chance to clean up your relationship shit. Again, if you have these final degrees over here, right? Not everybody does, but again, if you're playing the whole sign game, you will. So you're cleaning up certain parts. Theoretically, you should have already cleaned them up. But for me, it's like this is where it puts you on doubt. Like, oh, am I worth this person? Is this person worth me? Right? Going through all the things that keep you from being worthy of another person's love, which is really an expression of God's love. And if you've been doing the 6th house work with Saturn prior to getting there, you've been taking care of yourself. You've been taking care of your own personal business. You're ready. You're ready to have a contact with somebody important in your life. And with Saturn Neptune there, it can be deep and profound. But if you hold on to the idea of who you have been with in the past, you're not going to allow the new potentiality to come through. So that's really important. And it's like, oh, but if I'm actually with this person, then this other person that I was with, they're going to be alone and they're going to be lonely and they're going to feel like they don't have anybody. And that may be true. That may be true. Or it may be that you would be setting the bar kind of high for them to have their own experience. And maybe it's not together. Maybe it's with other people. But I like the Saturn Neptune transit in the seventh because ultimately it's about long-term bonds and relationships that are very deep and have tremendous creative potential. But again, you're working out the last bits of it all. We're all working out the last bits of it all. Now, I know I have the eighth here somewhere. Where is it? So, hold on. Right there. Discipline or damnation. So again, if we're playing this game, you're going to have Pisces over here, right? So that would put Aries, let's see, Aquarius over here, which is a Leo rising. Leo rising. So yeah, it's pretty heavy. Right. I think, and I don't say this casually, but I think there's a lot of testing going on here. If you have Saturn, Neptune in this part of your chart and getting ready to transit into the ninth, there's a lot of testing that's going on, who you are and what your deeper motivations in life are. And if you come through these tests, you will be granted great power. I'm serious. But you have to come through it with a sense of honor, integrity, to some degree, morality. I'd say yes. There is a high road factor, but it doesn't mean that you have to turn the other cheek either. Right? There's something very profound. Like you're here, just getting those last pieces cleansed, so that when Saturn and Neptune move up into that ninth house, your awareness of the big picture, the cosmic view, the higher mind is ready. You're ready. You're in the final throes of kind of a deep and transformative level of testing. And if you come through it, some very interesting things are ahead for you. Right. So discipline or damnation, which one are you going to follow? Because if you when I say discipline, I'm not talking about denial. I'm talking about learning how to use the powers of the eighth house responsibly. And the powers of the eighth house are profound. They're connected to the powers of creation and magic. It's the underworld. It can be very supernatural. So there is a forging and a testing that's been going on in your life. If you've had Saturn going through your eighth house, and with the arrival of Neptune there, yeah, deep stuff. Okay, what else do we have here? Let's go to the aforementioned ninth house. So this is about connecting with your higher mind. Well, how do you connect with your higher mind? Go back to the third house. You cut out the chatter, right? And then you don't have a definition of what God is supposed to be or look like. That's what we're talking about here. You're not here to define the terms and conditions. of the creator. Because of the retrograde, you'll find out, but you'll find out in a very retrocausal fashion. And what you thought you knew to be the truth won't be the truth. And when you let that go, it will lead you to a greater truth, and a greater truth, and a greater truth, and a greater truth. There's a lot of dogma that's associated. So I think of this house as kind of what a lot of Americans are going through now. A lot of Americans are scared. They see what's going on, and they're not immune to understanding that AI is around the corner or digital ID. There are a lot of very scared Americans, and they have gone full bore into their faith, and also Donald Trump. It's like a big thing for them, which I think I understand. But Trump's not God. He may have gotten a new crown from the Koreans, but he's not God. So Saturn, Neptune, ninth house retrograde, it's going to remind you that the people that you thought were God or the professed holy ones, your teachers, your priests, your rabbis, your ministers, whoever they are, the retrograde is like, no, no, no. They're not the ones that you need to be reaching towards. You need to be reaching towards those things that you have within you that they claim to have access to. That's what the retrograde in the ninth house is all about. And when you let that go and it moves forward, you're in like Flint. Do I have I didn't even do the 10th house. Let me get rid of this. I was on full blast as I was trying to get this together. Okay, so let's do the 10th house. What is going to be for the 10th house? Okay. Let's do this. All right. I'm feeling a little irreverent here. I'm feeling just a tad bit irreverent. Okay. Okay, 10th house, Neptune, Saturn, the retrograde, let go and let Bob. It's really kind of a takeoff on let go and let God, but I didn't want to use God. I was thinking of the two Bobs from Office Space, the guys that come into personnel and try to figure out who's relevant and ask, could you tell me what it is, just what it is you do here? And those guys were Bob, right? And in Office Space, the main character of Office Space, he lets go and lets Bob. He just lets it go, and he just tells Bob the truth, right? And Bob is like, "Hey," both Bobs, "Hey, we're gonna promote you. You're something else, right?" I mean, it was when he stopped kind of caring, right? When he stopped caring about what he was supposed to do at Inintech, that his job became a hell of a lot easier. And so Bob is kind of like a stand-in for God. But I thought Bob was funnier because of the movie Office Space. And if you're not feeling fulfilled in your work, the retrograde can help you get in touch with that. And you may want to let it go. You may want to let it go. Now I talked about the sixth house before, and that's usually like the sixth house is an important house. We couldn't get by in the world without the sixth house and sixth house people, and because we all serve one another to some capacity. So the 10th house, though, is the thing that you're known for. And with the retrograde, with Pisces and Neptune, you begin to wonder, well, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this going to be my lot? Now, Saturn in the 10th house is damn good, let me tell you. Saturn in the 10th house, you're going to be on, right? It's going to generally make you what Leo rising, right? Right. So no, Cancer rising. So if you've got Saturn and Pisces retrograding in your 10th house, be right about there, right? So I'd be right at the end. Well, it depends on the degree. I'd have to look at your chart. If we're talking whole signs again, we'll go with the whole sign thing. If you have Saturn, Neptune in your 10th house, either retrograding and getting ready to move on and go into your 11th house, or you're dealing with it sort of being there in your whole house sign. Let go of the things that aren't working and focus on the things that are, because Saturn can be a tremendous transit through the 10th. And if you're letting go of what you've done and what you think you should have been doing, and it means that Saturn's going into your 11th house, means it's time to network. And it's time to start to branch out and connect with other people. Although your connections may be very specific, because with Saturn, Neptune in the 11th, it's hasta la vista, baby. You may be saying goodbye to some friends, right? In Pisces now. In Pisces, you may be saying goodbye to some friends. People that you thought were very close and you would be lifelong friends. Maybe you're saying goodbye because they're saying goodbye. Friendship is a two-way street, right, Peachy? But you're supposed to be able to be okay with that, to be okay with the uncomfortable nature as to whether or not you'll ever be friends again. And there may be a possibility where your friends may actually leave this world with a Saturn Neptune retrograde in the 11th house. I'll give you another possibility here. And this does have to do with friendship. This is the possibility of somebody returning to your life that had been a very, very good friend, and for whatever reason comes back. Now they may not come back with good news. They may come back with news that you don't want to hear, but they're back again. So just pay attention to that. If you've got Pisces up around this area, right, or we're dealing with whole signs, it is the return of somebody who's very important to you. And anytime we get into Saturn territory, we're also getting into the father, right? And this is one of the things about Saturn and Neptune and this whole idea of fathers and leadership. And it's going to be a very interesting time, because once this thing gets cooking and we get Saturn, Neptune moving in Aries, there's going to be false leaders. There are going to be people who purport to be leaders, but they won't be. And there are going to be people who are going to have leadership thrust upon them, and they don't want it. But they're the ones that are best suited to lead. It's going to be very interesting. Keep your eye on things like that. Keep your eye on the people who want to be out front and are campaigning. Like the Pete Hegs's of the world, they're not the leaders. It's the people that you don't see coming. They're the ones. It's the people that don't want the responsibility. They're the ones. They're the ones that will take it on because nobody else will. Not in the way they will. And maybe you're one of those people. And if you are one of those people, then it's your responsibility. It's your accountability to do what you have to do, whatever it is, in order to hold up your end of the bargain. To act, live, and breathe every day with the idea that you are responsible for other lives. And it's a heavy, heavy burden. But and this is the nature of Saturn Neptune. Many are called, few are chosen. All right, we got one last one here. Saturn Neptune retrograde 12th house. What did I come up with for that one? Let's see. It's right here. Oops, where'd it go? Right there. Little Jim Morrison, The Doors, the 12th house. This is the end, my friend. This is if you have Saturn Neptune and they're retrograding back into your 12th house, even if ever so briefly. Clearly, it's the end of your Saturn transit in Pisces in the 12th house. But it is the end of a 28-year cycle, especially with Saturn, that sets you free and sets you up with Saturn Neptune on the ascendant, especially Saturn in the first house. But it's a drawing of a time where there is sadness, there is a letting go. The things that you've held on to dearly can be painful to let go of, but very critical because somewhere you're going to have some kind of a message, a deep message, a dream, something profound, a series of synchronicities that tell you that without any doubt that the life that you've been living is over and that you are getting ready to embark on a completely new and different adventure and to not be afraid, right? And a lot of times you'll get people that will cycle back through, and not just people that are here amongst us, but spirits, uh, ancestors, the dearly departed, right? It's a very powerful retrograde through the 12th house. It won't last long. It's only 5 degrees. But in the end, this is where I could go through all those houses, and we're all going to have some of that. We're all going to have some of this letting go and purification before we move into this new wave, this new cycle, this new time for us where things happen very quickly. Thoughts become things very quickly. Manifestation happens quickly. And you want to be ready. You want to be in the now. That's what Aries is all about. It's all about being in the now, no matter where Saturn and Neptune are transiting through your chart in Aries. It doesn't really matter as long as you're present. That's it. Just be present. Figure out where they are, be present, and then get to work. Because Saturn says get to work. If you put the time and the effort in, right? Like Neptune being there, it's sort of like if you get up and meditate and pray every day, which I used to do every day. For me, it was like showing up just to show God that I was there showing up. I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm here, I'm showing up. And you do that enough, all of a sudden, these greater forces start paying attention. And they say, this person's serious. They're serious about this. They're ready to have some greater contact than the heavy gravitational pull of the third dimension. It's like, wow, okay, cool. I'm glad I showed up. It's very similar, but again, the phrase that I will use is, God helps those who help themselves. So with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, if you put your shoulder to the wheel and put in the work in that area of your chart, you will get something back. You will get the divine blessing. Your work will be blessed. Trust me on this. And then guess what? You're imbued with more soul, more power, more will, right? It's a beautiful thing. And we're just at this place now where we have to clean this out. It's a very brief period of time. So I urge all of you to the best of your, and when I go through this, man, I tell you, my life goes on blast. When I do shows and I start talking about even on the weather, I'll go through the weather and I'll come up against my own weather that day. So I'm clearly not immune to any of this. So when I'm talking to you, I'm also talking to me as well. And take advantage of the time, right? Slow down a little bit. Slow down a little bit in this retrograde. Figure out what you need to let go of. Figure out what you need to cleanse. Where is it happening in your chart? What house is it moving from and to? What are you saying goodbye to? What are you saying hello to? These are all very, very important factors. Okay. All right. That'll do it. Look at that. A crisp 2.5 hours. No dung. It's a no dung Sunday. No dung Sunday. All right. I'm out here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Chataria, you're the best. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart, to say what's possible. If you're interested in a reading and want to know more about your chart and what's going on in your life, you can do that. You can access that through this page. Don't forget our sponsors. Take care of yourselves. Treat each other well. God bless. Bye for now.